This is NEWSFASH, the podcast where fashion and news meet for your weekly dose of insider insights. I'm your host, fashion journalist Mosha Lundström Halbert, and together we're going to stay up to date and open to learn about fashion from a variety of perspectives. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of NEWSFASH Live, where I will be running through the top fashion news stories of the week, of which we've just had some breaking news, and also taking any and all of your questions, which is really my favorite thing to do. I'm so sorry, I just wanted to say, for missing last week. I've been horribly ill. I don't know about anyone else, but January really kicked my butt and I was all set to record and then just could not stop sneezing and coughing and whatnot. So I had to just listen to my body and rest up, even though the world of fashion seems like it never sleeps and there's been so much news. So as I wait for everyone, a few more of you to hop on and join, we can start to talk about some of the breaking news of the week, which of course involves the recent announcement that Sabato de Sarno, which just broke this morning actually, is exiting Gucci effective immediately. So he's not even technically going to be taking credit for the collection, which is set to be shown in Milan in just a couple weeks now, like 3 weeks, because we're just on the precipice of New York Fashion Week. And then we'll go to London and then, of course, Milan and then Paris. So Gucci executives have announced that that collection will actually be credited to the design team, even though presumably, he already started working on that collection before this termination announcement was made public. And I noticed just a few days ago, he was all over the Gucci social media account, adding heart comments and the like and likes to various new Gucci advertisements. But I think this issue, it isn't just a question of if Sabato de Sarno did a good job. You know, it takes a village to sink or swim. And I would love to talk about and look at with you some of the success metrics for a brand like Gucci and ways that a creative director and team can succeed or not succeed. If you've just joined us, we are about to dive right into the breaking biggest news fash of the week, the month, maybe the year thus far, actually, which is that Sabato de Sarno is exiting Gucci. He was only there for 2 years, which equated to 6 seasons. I went back and counted them all. And what do you think? 2 years isn't a long time. 6 seasons, I guess, is an appropriate gauge for executives and the parent company caring of Gucci to determine if he was the right fit for the job and if consumers were responding. I know in the first few seasons, the kind of company line about why they didn't see an immediate uptick in sales growth from Sabato's collections was always blamed on the fact that his collections had not entered stores yet. And most of what was still in stores was from the previous creative director. That would be Alessandro Michele. But I also think that this was a very hard role to come into because Gucci was on a decline and had a superstar designer like Alessandro Michele. But I think desire for the brand, the hype around the brand had softened. And this is for a number of reasons. Like, fashion brands themselves come in and out of fashion and can be trends, you know, like I don't think we talk about this very much, but the brand, sometimes the logo, the affinity we have for it can come in and out of fashion with very few exceptions. Perhaps Chanel and Louis Vuitton recently, or for the past several decades, are two of the only ones. But the rest of the brands seem to really
become in and out of favor depending on a number of other factors. And if you look at the trajectory with Gucci and their various creative directors, it seems like they'll have a really hot moment and then they'll go cold. Hot, cold, hot, cold. If you look at Gucci was definitely in a cold period in the early 90s, and then Tom Ford joined. Gucci had never been hotter, right? And then what happened afterwards was a bunch of various designers. Ultimately, and that didn't work. I remember Alessandra Faccinetti. I don't remember the names of the others that were in there for these like brief stints. And then they settled on Frida Giannini. That was like generally a cooling off period, but they were able to achieve some commercial success. Then they got Alessandro Michele, who had been at Gucci for a while and was there he started in 2017, I believe. So he was there like 7 years total, or maybe it was 2016. In any case, that was like a hot period for the brand. Now they're kind of cooled off. It's one of those brands too that I feel like it's easy to OD on. And it's kind of like, think about one of your favorite foods or something. Like you have a period where you're just hyper fixated on it and want a lot of that. And then you kind of can't look at it again. It doesn't taste good to you and it makes your stomach turn. That might be the case with Gucci, but then they do also have this like core consumer. We all probably know someone like this that wears Gucci loafers and belts and is more of that like stay the course consumer that is not so interested in the newest, hottest, latest fashion proposition. And for them, they just want Gucci to make beautiful footwear, classic accessories, and reliable leather goods that they can pick up on their duty-free travels, right? And I think that Kering executives kind of wanted Sabato de Sarno to go in more of that like staid stealth wealth direction, where they saw the industry going with the likes of brands like the Row and Loro Piana having so much success. But I just don't think that that's really what consumers want from that brand or even want the brand right now. Taking some of your questions, Sky and Vape says, does Gucci have its own identity anymore? That's a good question. I think that they were really striving for that. If you look at their red carpet strategy, like it is a bit of a pity because I think that that was really de Sarno's strength. I mean, he had come from Valentino and worked alongside Pier Paolo Piccioli there for years and had been able to execute time and time again really faultless gowns. And if you look at the red carpet dressing that he did during his time at Gucci, it was also like he didn't really put a foot wrong in that department. Everyone looked amazing. I mean, that green dress on Taylor Swift, that's one of my favorite things she's ever worn. And we all know that she often makes really bizarre public appearance and just everyday fashion choices, right? But then even like the looks he made for Salma Hayek, for Andrew Garfield, for Paul Mescal, I just thought looked great. He made people he dressed looked great. I just think the disconnect there was he wasn't able to steer the brand in a direction where they were creating product that consumers felt compelled to rush to the stores and buy. And I do think a lot of times these brands with their red carpet strategies, there is a big disconnect. And I know I've spoken on this before, but like, you know, Louis Vuitton, no one goes to Louis Vuitton for evening wear. So I really don't understand. I guess they just have enough money to throw at this, why they pursue so much of these red carpet opportunities when it seems like it's such a disconnect from like their core offering or even what you experience in Louis Vuitton stores, which is like their ready to wear is primarily still like logo driven. And then you have all their bread and butter, speedy and wheelie bags. Anyways, taking a few more of your questions. Andrew says the style singer has little style. What do you mean by that? Do you mean Harry Styles? I also think if you didn't, or if you did, I think that brings up a really good point, which is also too that like, I do think the Harry Styles of it all was a really big factor of why Gucci permeated culture and influenced the way that so many people, men in particular, wanted to dress. And I think the end of Alessandro Michele's tenure and the Harry Styles Gucci deal and ification of it all really hurt the brand. I don't think anybody else like assumed those reins of somebody that was embodying the brand in such a compelling way as Harry did for those years. So number 2 says, what do you think the future is of Gucci now? I think Gucci is a bit like J-Lo in that they're oversaturated, and I think they need to go away for a little bit and make us miss them again. You know, like deprive us of some Gucci, make us long for more interlocking G's, and then come back with a really strong proposition that feels both retro and right for right now. But that might just mean that they have to endure another year or 2 or 3 of a true cooling off to allow somebody to come in with a really fresh take and have the market and consumer desirability meet them where they are. Because right now they're just not. And it really is sad, you know, if you Gucci stores are just not a very busy place at the moment. And you can just tell that most consumers have moved on. But what do you think? What would you like from Gucci? What do you think that Sabato de Sarno did right or wrong? Do you feel like he was given enough time? Did you resonate with his work? Do you think his first collection kind of said it all and he probably should have been let go right after that? Or do you think Kering did the appropriate thing by giving him 6 collections to try to turn it around and prove himself? Number 2 says, I feel like he tried to bring a modern 90s Tom Ford look, but it didn't work. I know. I think a lot, this is like, I have this theory that, well, my mom always says, if you let the patients run the asylum, then the end result is just crazy. And I think that maybe there was a lot of like online sentiment for bring Tom Ford back. And whenever I report on anything Gucci related, people always say, oh, bring Tom Ford back. Tom Ford doesn't want to come back. Tom Ford is a billionaire and very happy to pursue as many creative pursuits as he would like or wouldn't like, but he's definitely not going back to Gucci. Tom Ford is his own boss. He's not going to work under anyone ever again, I don't think, in that capacity. But I think that de Sarno's efforts to recapture that Tom Ford nostalgia didn't really work in light of the current climate where there is a Tom Ford brand that still does that. And that's part of their moda operandi as well. So their modus operandi, I should say. And so, oh, this is an interesting point. Rakvidich says, why do they love to compare designers with each other? I know. Must be really hard as a designer, but you see this in lots of different métiers, certainly in the arts with like singers too. They're often, you know, like that singer Ray is compared to Amy Winehouse, or you know, people are Tate McRae is compared to Britney Spears. I think a lot of times you do see designers, creatives, artists taking inspiration and trying to build upon the work of others. And there's very few that come along that don't feel referential as well. Silk Milk says, the real question is, who will Taylor Swift wear at the Super Bowl? That is a very good question because she has been wearing a lot of Gucci and a lot of Louis Vuitton. She's definitely in her Logomania era. I noticed that one of her like after party looks from the Grammys, and if you have any questions about Grammys fashion, I don't know if it's still too late. We can still talk about that as well. Considering that I missed last week, but I noticed that she changed into like beaded, embellished, logoed Gucci by Sabato de Sarno mini dress for the Grammys after parties this year. And she'd been wearing a lot of Gucci lately, and I thought it worked on her. Who will Taylor Swift wear at the Super Bowl? I wouldn't be surprised if she wore Chanel again. I wouldn't be, but I think it's going to be a head to toe designer look. Silk Milk said she wore Cavalli at the Grammys. Taylor Swift? No, she didn't. She wore Vivienne Westwood. Oh, I like when people chat with each other because Rakvidich said to, or number 1 said to Rakvidich, and remember Tom Ford revamped Gucci when it nearly went bankrupt. Yes. So maybe that is the Gucci like soap opera of it all. It needs to go really, really, really down, like way more than it even is, even though they've had a pretty significant sales decline. over the past few years, even during the tenure of Alessandro Michele. And that's why he left, because they wanted him to go in the direction that Sabato de Sarno was going in, more minimalist. Like that was a company directive that de Sarno was given that Michele did not want to follow and execute, because he wanted to be his maximalist, circus self. And Valentino gave him the opportunity to continue doing that. And it is kind of ironic that de Sarno left Valentino for Gucci, and Michele left Gucci. I think he had a non-compete which lasted a few years, and then now has landed at Valentino. And the question now is, Pier Paolo Piccioli and de Sarno are both out of work and worked together so well. I don't know. Maybe Pier Paolo Piccioli will end up at Fendi and he'll bring de Sarno with him again. I personally didn't feel that de Sarno had like the gravitas or just like presence or point of view for a creative director to be a creative director of such a major house as Gucci, and probably was better served being the right hand still at this age and stage. Sorry if that's a bit rude, but that is just how I feel. There's certain designers that have that star power, and I would argue that you need that for a house like Gucci, and Michele certainly had that, and Tom Ford certainly had that. And I think perhaps Kering wanted to have a more discreet designer in that role that would be easier to cycle in and out, with the stakes being a bit lower if it didn't work. And this clearly didn't work. But also the marketing was not good. And I don't feel like they had the right ambassadors as well. So I think there was a variety of factors. Rafidich says, do you know who picks the new designer at a house like Gucci? Yes, it would be, there's like a group creative director at Kering who oversees these appointments, and then would have to, bring a bunch of candidates to Francois Pinault, who is the chairman of Kering. And also oftentimes brands like Chanel and also companies like LVMH and Kering will bring in outside recruitment agencies in order to help them find candidates. I know that's what Chanel did in order to land on Mathieu Blazy. Live Like Life says, hey, I wasn't wrong as I told you a couple months ago about Sabato de Sarno. Yeah, you probably did. I think a lot of us saw it coming, and I think the reality is that I think the day and age of long designer tenures is kind of over, as in the digital age now, I think consumers experience trends so much quicker, and it's the reaction to work is so immediate that I don't think it's perhaps necessary for these brands to engage creative directors in longer tenures or longer contracts, because if it doesn't work, or if they start to experience consumer fatigue, it behooves them to be able to cycle them in and out. And perhaps brands want to move to models where the designers are not so like integral to the public facing brand strategy and marketing strategy, because if it's not working, the stakes will just be lower. Do you know what I mean? Like have more anonymous designers, sort of like what Margiela was doing for a while, might be a way that the industry moves to in the future, in order to have brands not be given the criticism of, participating in the designer musical chairs. Silk Milk says, I saw Travis wearing Tom Brown. I don't get his designs. Is it me? Tom Brown is not for everyone, and a lot of people don't get it. You either like it or you don't. And Tom Brown doesn't really like adapt to the wearer. The wearer adapts to Tom Brown, and it's always so distinctive. And I think that that's part of what was missing with the Gucci proposition. Like oftentimes, even when I was looking at the red carpet, I would be like, oh, that's a nice dress. Who made that? Or that's a nice suit. Oh, it's Gucci. But it wasn't like immediately obvious. And that's hard to do without a logo. But I don't think he was able to do it. Live Like Life says, it feels like the historical development of cinema when the system became the studio system. Yeah, that's an interesting parallel. I do feel like LVMH almost creates a studio system, the way that they cycle their designers and move them to different houses within, whereas Kering seems to just like excuse their designers. If you look at what's happening with J.W. Anderson now, presumably taking on the mantle at Dior, and how Kim Jones was moved to so many different LVMH fashion brands, from Louis Vuitton to Dior to Fendi, to exiting the company altogether for now. We shall see. Ken says, how do I get a gig like that? Love from Australia. How do you get a gig like Sabato de Sarno's? Well, for Gucci, I don't know. You either have to be, it seems like, a born and bred Italian who comes up via, traditional methods within the Italian fashion system, toiling away at various Italian heritage fashion houses, or a freak of nature behemoth, multi-hyphenate like Tom Ford, who interestingly enough started off as an actor before he ended up a fashion designer. Somebody said, did anybody look better than Olivia Rodrigo in Versace? We're talking about Grammys fashion now. I don't know if I'm really into the Olivia Rodrigo, like, archival fashion strategy. I think it's almost a way to try to superimpose personal style upon this young woman when I'm not sure it's there on its own. And the things that her stylist puts her in are just very plain. And I don't think help differentiate her or create like a signature style beyond the fact that she seems to wear a lot of archival. I would love to see there be a more creative strategy there that didn't just feel so plain. Like, I feel nothing usually when I look at her looks on the red carpet. And when you listen to her music, it packs such a punch, and she has such a powerful voice and personality and turn of phrase, and then not feeling that come through in the fashion, to me, is a missed opportunity. Silk Milk says, I was thinking a whole Chanel outfit too with regards to Taylor Swift. We shall see, though. She loves her head to toe these days. Zach Rumor says, sorry, very off topic, but may I ask what you use for your hair products? It's always shiny and perfect. Thank you very much. Tricks for shiny hair. Don't heat style very often. Make your shower freezing cold at the end. And I use that Kerastase Ciment product, Ciment, that comes in like sort of a turquoise green tube before I blow dry. And that's really my secret. I don't really have like a special shampoo or conditioner strategy. I use the Way hair oil, the rose hair oil, like that. And I use Fanola, this like crazy Italian super blue shampoo that stains your palms. I use that once a week. Who will Ariana wear at the Oscars? Ooh, that's a good question. Why do I feel like it might be like Jean-Baptiste Valli or something? I don't know why that popped into my head, but like that kind of ball gown, I think, seems to be the direction she's going in with this press tour, and like lots of pastels. That would be my guess. And we know that Cynthia Erivo will be in Louis Vuitton, but frankly, she's my favorite of all the Louis Vuitton ambassadors. Like, she never lets those crazy, nonsensical, like Louis Vuitton red carpet looks wear her. She seems to always wear them with lots of aplomb. So I quite enjoy them. Okay. So I'm just going to take a few more questions. Oh, there's a 13 at the bottom. Sorry if I missed them. We'll go through those questions, and then I have to dash because I'm still not like 100%, and I'm sure you can probably hear it and see it. And this is taking it out of me a little bit. Wow, I always push through colds and sicknesses, but sometimes they really do get the better of you. Ray Ramirez says, I love Tom Brown. Yes, people either love or hate Tom Brown. And you have to love gray. And not 50 Shades of Gray, but that very specific, like, mid-tone gray. Tom Brown is one of those brands, too, that's, like, really big in Japan as well. Like, Paul Smith is really big in Japan. Tony Morales says, do you think Alessandro Michele will have a long tenure at Valentino? I don't think anyone's going to have a long tenure anymore. Like, define long. Like, I think, honestly, if he had another 5 to 7 years. I'd consider that long. I think he's such a get for Valentino that they'll continue to try to maximize it. I did try on a very sweet pair of Valentino shoes by Alessandro Michele at Dover Street Market the other week, and they were great. And I think once the accessories start to hit stores, people are going to have a lot of fun with them. I just would love for him to stop using logos. Like, I do not want to wear a Valentino logo. No. Please, no. Please. It's not one of those brands that needs a logo, or is defined by a logo. And I just wish he would stop trying to foist logos upon us. Like, you did that at Gucci. And what I stopped liking about your work at Gucci was not the work, Alessandro, like he's even listening to this, but I'm talking to you, but was the logo. So I would love if he would retire that. Please let it rest with the V. Ha says, you're a treasure trove of information. Thank you for doing this. Oh, thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot. Let's talk about Kanye, because MJ0506, who's been here many times before, so thank you for joining us again, said, wasn't Kanye's girlfriend interesting ensemble, for lack of a better word? Yes, and the reason that happened, I've decided, was it was all just a way to drive buzz and hype and sales for a new Yeezy drop, which if you look on Ye's Instagram is exactly what they've done with a like sheer bodysuit version of the dress that Bianca Censori wore. I'm sure they will offer that dress as well. I don't know. My significant other would not want me dressed that way. I don't know about yours. That would not fly, and I would not feel comfortable. And I think it really raises a lot of interesting questions about what is fashion and what is agency and how women choose to appear in the public eye in service of men and their work. And actually, just a segue, you should check out a video that I recently posted this week about Blake Lively's wardrobe in It Ends With Us. I almost said, and just like that, which I also spoke about in the video, and Emily in Paris, and how this idea of like wackadoodle fashion as a folly for female-led film and television projects can work or not, can be a flop or be part of what makes something take off. And what I think that she was trying to do with It Ends With Us, and why it did or didn't work, and why I actually found it wildly entertaining, but not because of its servicing, not because it served the purpose of helping with the narrative or the character in that project, but more because of the meta narrative and everything that's come out since the lawsuit. So I'd love to know what you think about that too. AMB says, can you say it? NEWSFASH. Yes, I can. I don't know if it sounds better or worse with this cold though. NEWSFASH. And I don't know why I need to like lower my voice an octave when I say that. It started that way, and now that's just my autopilot. I can't say, no, I have to go NEWSFASH. You try to say it. NEWSFASH. You have to drop the octave. It just feels right. Okay, Ha says, thoughts on Glenn Martin's appointment at Margiela? Big shoes to fill, it seems. Yeah and no. I think a lot of what Glenn Martin's was doing with Y Project was very Margiela-esque. The question for me, though, remains, will he continue at Diesel? I don't think that designers having more than one brand responsibility in this day and age with the scope of the work today really makes a lot of sense. And I'd rather see more designers get employed, frankly, than less designers be spread super thin. So I think the best thing for Renzo Rosso to do at Only the Brave, who's the parent company of Margiela, and Diesel and Jill Sander, who also needs a new designer, would be to hire more, not less designers, hire collectives, hire them straight out of design schools, give more young, creative people employment opportunities. That would be my wish. Hennesbeat, I guess you just joined us because you said Sabato leaving Gucci. Thoughts? Well, we spoke about that earlier in this episode, and this is an episode because I'm recording all this. This isn't just a live. This will live as well as my podcast and on YouTube as well, all under NEWSFASH, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So you can tune into that as well, where we spoke earlier in the episode about why we think it did or didn't work for Sabato at Gucci, how he will be remembered, and who we think could fill that role next. I will say though, because I didn't touch on this before and somebody suggested it earlier, there was a rumor a few months ago and a story that Eddie Slimane had bought an apartment in Milan and was maybe going to be the successor of Giorgio Armani at Armani, but maybe he'll end up at Gucci. Somebody suggested that on my Instagram, and I thought, he had a bit of a falling out with Kering last time and actually sued them when he was at Saint Laurent. But, maybe it's water under the bridge and, money talks. Maybe they bought their way out of that whole snafu and are able to get on better terms. And if, Eddie is such a brilliant merchandiser and so good at going into brands. And he's kind of like a foolproof turnaround one-man machine. Obviously, it takes a village, but he's as foolproof as it comes, I think, in this industry. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that worked out because that was so successful at Saint Laurent. And Anthony Vaccarello has done a very good job at carrying that torch. But I think if Gucci wants to go in just a very straightforward, less creatively led vision, not that Eddie Slimane isn't creative, but you know what I mean, like less artistic vision and more commercially driven, then you probably can't ask for a better option in this day and age than Eddie Slimane. Nina Mosley says, thoughts on the Morgan Stewart McGraw effect. Morgan Stewart McGraw is fantastic. That woman is so good on camera and, she shines on social media, and I would love to see her have a more long form offering for her content and her takes on fashion. And I think she's just a really good example of somebody who is a consumer and a connoisseur and has their own personal style and stays the course and is very entertaining. Okay. Now everyone's just debating if my hair is a wig or not, and I'll let you just carry on that conversation if that is interesting to you, but no, it's not. It grows straight out of my head. So without further ado, that wraps your NEWSFASH. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us, and I will be back next week with more. Check out my latest NEWSFASH videos where you can see all the latest fashion news as it breaks as well. And take care.
That wraps your NEWSFASH. I'm Mosha Lundström Halbert. Stick with me here and over on TikTok to stay up to date on all things fashion. If you have any questions or guest suggestions or feedback, please drop us a line at mosha@newsfashmedia.com.